Hey there, today I want to bring you through my kitchen garden and show you what's growing this month. So it is the end of April and I want to show you all the things that are blooming and starting to take off after being planted about a month or a month and a half ago. So just for reference, I have 6 raised beds in my kitchen garden and I generally plant the same thing every 2 beds. So my first 2 beds are similar, the middle 2 and the last 2 all kind of mirror one another. So I'm going to start you with these first front 2 beds. So come on and check them out. So in these first 2 beds, I have mostly all greens growing. So this is April for me. I'm in the cool season. I'm growing this garden in the Chicago area. I'm in northwest suburb of Chicago. So generally we can start planting in the garden somewhere around early March, especially if you have raised beds. You can start planting much earlier than if you were growing in ground. So I started a few of these greens indoors, probably around in the middle of February. And the first is my Napa cabbages. So these are they were grown from seed indoors for about 4 weeks. And then I planted these out at the end of March out into the garden. So you can see I packed in a bunch of them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in this bed, and just about the same amount over in this bed too. So Napa cabbages, those are my larger plants that are growing in these beds. Then I also started some kales indoors at the same time. So these were started from seed and I planted these out just at the exact same time as the cabbage. So you can see how different their growth is compared to the size of these cabbages. So this is a red Russian kale and I planted them on both sides. So you can see these greens, and I actually just harvested from these kales this morning for a smoothie. So I've got these red Russian kales that'll grow on either side of the garden. And believe it or not, these are gonna grow throughout the whole entirety of the summer. So over the past 2 years when I've grown here in the Chicago area, I've had kale literally coming out of my ears for months. So these will go from now all the way till even through a couple of the first frosts that we have in, say, October, November in the fall. Now here along the trellises, what I have are sugar snap peas. So I planted these directly in the garden from seed, and I planted these about, probably about a whole month ago, so about 4 weeks ago. They've been slow to come up, but you can see they're starting to get ready to trellis, and I'll show you how to do that in another video to keep them attached to the trellis. So I've got peas here. And then right here on the edge, I also direct seeded some radishes. So these are French breakfast radishes. You can see they're starting to form their bulb right there at the bottom, their roots. And these again probably were planted about 4 weeks ago. I've needed to thin these a couple of times. I planted them a little too thick. But the great thing about radishes is you can eat from the leaves too. So even while you're waiting on the radishes to form, you can eat the greens. They're kind of spicy. They kind of taste like arugula a little bit. So they're great to add to salad greens, and then also you can like saute them for a little greens dish. Okay, so that's mostly what's in these front 2 beds. You can tell I have herbs on the edges. So these chives have been in the beds now for this is the 3rd year they've been here. So they're the first thing to come up. At the end of winter, when things start to warm up a little bit, these pop out. So I've got chives here, I've got flowers, and then I always love to plant rosemary right on the front edges of my bed. So I've got rosemary and then some oregano here on this corner. I've also got some Swiss chard that I transplanted. These are small now, but they will be huge in a couple, I don't know, not a couple, but in 4 to 5 weeks. So that's mostly what's in the first 2 beds. I'm gonna chew up my, my radish greens and we'll move on to the next 2 beds. Okay, so these next 2 beds, I don't have a trellis in these beds, so these are mostly for just lower non-vining plants. So I put the peas in the front beds along the trellis, but these are just gonna be mostly for greens. Again, at the same time that I transplanted the Napa cabbages, I also transplanted these green cabbages. These are more traditional cabbages. And you can see they haven't grown nearly as quickly as the Napas. So these usually take more like 75 to even 90 days to form a head, whereas the Napas may form their head within 60 days. So that's why I grew more Napa cabbages. I'll give you some more tutorials on how to get your cabbages to finish up and produce a head. So I transplanted these. I'm still chewing that radish leaf. So I transplanted these, put these down the middle, and then I was also growing at the same time indoors some Toscano kale. So you may be familiar with the term dinosaur kale. Toscano kale is basically the same thing. It's those giant, super dark leafy greens, so good for you. So I started these indoors, again, under lights in February, and then I transplanted these plants out about a month ago. So you can see already how they're starting to form really nice sized leaves, and I've already harvested off of these plants. Yesterday I made my first green smoothie from the garden with these leaves. So I've got about, I don't know, 7 or 8 on this side, and then I have about 7 or 8 in this bed as well. Actually more even on this bed because I have them on both sides. So I put those, and then I came back with seeds. So once I put those transplants in, that kind of sets the design of the beds, and then I come back in with seeds to fill in all the blank spaces. So in between these cabbages and kales, I planted my favorite lettuce mix, which is Rocky Top lettuce mix. So this is from Baker Creek. It's just nice if you've ever, I'm sure you have, bought like a spring mix from the grocery store. Rocky Top is basically like that. It's like a spring mix. It's got little butter crunch and some speckled lettuce and some red lettuces. So you can see these starting to come up from seed. I literally just scattered the seed here and put it into the bed, and you can see this is about, say, 2 weeks after planting. These beds, I have not covered them, so they've endured frost, and that's meant that they've grown a little bit slower, but I've just been busy and honestly a little lazy. So I just kind of let the garden do its thing this spring. I have not covered it. So what you see here is what's endured frost and even a little bit of light snow once they were seeded. I do have this mystery plant. You can put in the comments if you know what it is. I think it's a weed. The thing that's throwing me off is that it's a little uniform in terms of its location. So I have all these little starts that have come up, and they honestly don't look like anything that I know of. I started to think they might be in the beet family because of the way the leaves were spread. But I'm beginning more and more to think that they are indeed a weed. But see how they're just all here in a line, which might make sense in terms of a airborne weed, that they would just kind of fall together. But it's thrown me off a little bit. So if you think you know what these are, you can let me know. And maybe there's some precious plant, and I'm gonna feel so horrible that I just pulled out a bunch. But I'm gonna probably pull those out today. And then I finally have carrots coming up on the edges. So I seeded some carrots just directly in the garden. You can see they're just starting to pop up. So they need to be thinned to about 1 every inch or 2, but you can see how they're starting to come up as well. I, as you know, love to pack in the plants. You can tell just from these beds, right? So sometimes carrots are the thing that suffer from my planting strategy. I've found oftentimes that carrots almost need their own bed because they need space and they also need sun. But we'll see how these do here. I was experimenting to have these on the edge so that they could kind of have their own space. And then again, of course, I have my edges planted with herbs and flowers. So on these beds, we have thyme growing, and you can see this one is coming out really well. And then these thymes actually were here already. They lasted through, this is probably their 3rd year in the garden. So they die back in the winter, and then they come back on their own when the ground starts to warm up. So awesome to have these herbs just appear again and again. Chives again reappearing, and then I added some lavender here this year on both corners of these beds. Lavender, I don't believe will make it through the winter here in Chicago. In Houston, where my business Rooted Garden is run, in a lot of warmer climates, you can get lavender to last through the year. All right, now we are going to head back to the final 2 beds. These 2 beds I've found over the last 3 years, they get the least amount of sun. So these are usually the first beds to shade out in the afternoon. So what I'm experimenting with this year is primarily focusing on greens and making these my salad beds for as much of the year as possible. And that's what you can see is here right now. So right down the center, again, we have large plants that I transplanted. So these are a purple mustard, and again, a purple mustard here. And then I added some other cabbages as well. I don't know how to say it. It's like aubergine or something like that. I'll put the name in the description below. So I've got these big cabbages, the purple mustards. I love these for like a sauteed greens dish. And then more of the same in the back. Now what I did, I was getting tired of waiting for things to come up in this bed. And so one afternoon, I literally just came out here and I just tossed a bunch of seeds. Not a bunch, but it was one mix. It's called Siamese Dragon Stir Fry Mix from Johnny's Seed. So it's basically brassica plants. It's like mustards, arugula, just all kinds of those spicy kind of dark greens. Some are purple. And I just literally scattered the seeds because I was just getting tired of these beds being empty. So you can see the product of doing that basically here in this bed. It's almost like, you know, just almost a microgreen mix right here, right now. So what I'll do, I can either come in here and thin these out, or I can literally just let them grow and harvest them as baby greens. Now, when I was being more methodical before I went a little crazy, I did sow these arugula seeds just directly in the garden. And as you can see, these have grown, they've been in the garden longer, but they're also growing to a better, more mature size. So these are actually perfect for harvesting. We'll do that later today to have my first arugula salad. So these are the perfect size for eating. They're not gonna be too peppery when they're this small. If you've never had arugula at this stage, you literally haven't had arugula the way it was meant to be. At least that's what I think. We do have peas on the trellises back here too, but like I said, these beds get less sun. So you'll see the proof of that, and that these peas are just now starting to kind of sprout and come up. Not quite as far along as the ones that are in the front two beds. So peas here, tons of brassica greens, and then I did have some kale that I transplanted as well. This is actually my favorite kale of all the three that I have planted this year, but ironically, it's the one I have the least amount of, so I'm not sure how that happened. But this is called a blue Scotch curled kale, and here you can see it starting to grow. So these were transplanted at the same time as the other kales that are in the front two beds. I love this kale. It turns out it grows really beautifully, the little curls on them, and I don't know if it's like something I made up in my head or what, but I feel like these kales fight off pests, like the curly nature of them just ends up meaning that they have less pest pressure than I find on the softer kale leaves like the red Russian kale or the Toscano. It could just be something I made up in my head. I don't know, but that's been my experience. All the kales can be used in different ways. So I generally love using this kale for a salad because it's got a little bit of a crunch and a sweetness. I love using the Toscano kale for smoothies or for like kale chips because it's bigger and rougher. And then I love using the red Russian kale in salads and then also for smoothies because it's just a soft, nice green that breaks up easily and isn't so chunky in a smoothie. So a million different ways to use kale. All right, so that is what my kitchen garden is growing this month. So this is April. The garden has been growing. All the things that you see were planted within the last 4 to 6 weeks. Some started indoors and then planted out here, but a lot planted directly from seed right into the soil. So I hope you've enjoyed the tour. Stay tuned all season long. I'll keep you updated on everything that's growing and how we win and lose some in the kitchen garden this year. Thanks for watching.